Hey everybody, and welcome back to Radical Slice. My name is Eric. This is going to be a slightly different kind of episode, a very special episode. I'm hoping I can get through this without too many edits. I've been fiddling around with sound effects and music, and I sort of was wondering the best way to record this, like whether or not to record everything as I was creating the sound effects and music, or just to kind of do it and then show you after it was done-ish. And I've opted for the second of those, just because like I'm not a composer and my process is like kind of all over the place right now. Maybe when I get a little bit more practice at that, I will do videos where I'm just doing music and stuff. But I think right now you wouldn't derive too much value from that stuff. So I'll do my best to explain what I did here, and hopefully it's worthwhile. So I'll start with sound effects. I knew that I needed sound effects for the punch and the kick. And after my exhaustive research of NES Brawler games, which included Mighty Final Fight and Double Dragon 2, and I think that was it. I landed on kind of just using the noise channel to do that. And so I did a different sound for the punch and the kick, because the animations for those are a bit different. Like as you can see, the punch is kind of faster, and the kick is a little bit more drawn out and deliberate. And there's like a longer antic, and you can already hear the sound effects that I'm using. So what those look like in the editor is this is the kick. You can see it's got like two distinct pieces to sort of map over the anticipation frame and the actual kick frame, like that. And the punch is just kind of a really quick whoosh kind of noise. So that's it. Not particularly interesting, but I think they work well enough in terms of uh, in terms of the game. The next sound effect that I knew that I wanted to include was an effect when you hit a tree or whatever, when you hit a baddie. And I went with noise on this too, but I managed to get kind of like a cool, like, thwack noise out of the channel. So it sounds kind of like this. Playing with the volume a little bit allowed me to get, and I think probably the notes is what allowed me to get kind of like this, like, thwack. So it sounds like an impact or whatever. So in the game, what that'll sound like is, so you can kind of hear that like thwacking noise after you take a guy down. So it does overlap a little bit with the combat noises because they're both using the noise channel. But I'm happy enough with this, I think. The next sound effect that I wanted to do was when the player takes damage, and I used which one is this? The tilted saw instrument, because it has like some qualities of like what you might expect from an 8-bit vocal sound, or something vaguely resembling like a voice. And I kind of wanted to have him be like, ugh. And so I ended up with this. So it does kind of sound a little bit like an impact. And I think when I pair it with some hit flash, it'll sound a little bit better. But let me kind of show you how that looks in practice. Okay, so here we are at the boss. Let's eat some apples. Ooh. So again, there's no like hit flash. I'll probably add that in a little bit later. But every time he takes damage, he kind of goes ow, and that's it. All right, the next thing that I knew I wanted was a little sound effect when you beat the boss, like a little victory sound effect. And so I sort of was mixing up instrument 5, which is the organ, instrument 7, which is the phaser, and kind of went with this upward thing, while at the same time bringing the volume down a little bit. And it kind of, oh, mercy, it kind of sounds like this, like that. And that will play kind of at the same time as the music, so it's not going to stand out too much. But if we look in the game, what that'll sound like is, okay, I'm about to beat the boss, so hopefully I can do that and not die and trigger the sound effect. There you go. And then we can just walk and we're at the next level. Okay, the next thing I knew I wanted was sort of a death noise, for lack of a better term, like when you run out of health. And I went with this kind of, I don't know, it seemed like a pretty obvious choice for me. I'm probably not thinking enough about it, but I just wanted to go with like a downward trend in the notes. It sounds like this. I did like add a couple of effects of detune and dampen, and I did choose notes from the same scale that I'm using for the music. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. And I'm just like repeating the notes and dropping the octave down each time. So you can see here, this is all an octave 2, 1, 0, etc. So again, that sounds like this. And let me show you how it looks in gameplay. Okay, so we're about to run out of health here, so we'll just let this play out. And I did add one thing, which I'll explain in a second. We'll have to go look at the code editor for this part for just a minute. So there we go, and it restarts. So you'll notice that there was a bit of a pause there, whereas before, when the player was dying, it would just like restart immediately. So let me show you like what the deal is with that. There will be a little bit of code in this episode after all. So this is the part where we're handling the player's death, and if we run out of health, we stop the music. There's no music playing now, but there will be by the end of the video. So we'll stop the music playing. We'll play that sort of boop 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 sound effect, and then we'll switch our sort of update loop function to the death update. And I'll show you that in a minute. Actually, we can show you that now. There's not much going there. All it's doing is checking the elapsed time and then handling some timers. And I'll explain the timers in a sec. So here, what I want to do is kind of stop the screen update, like stop the baddies from moving, stop the player from doing anything, kind of freeze things to let the sound effect play and like communicate that, hey, like you ran out of health, you're done here. So I'm adding this sort of timer structure, and I set the amount of time that I want to wait, which is a second and a half. I chose that because it just gives enough time for the sound effect to play. And then I'm also setting a callback function. So after a second and a half, this function is going to execute. And this is just like the reset logic, right? I'm reparsing the level, setting up everything, resetting the player, etc. This is all in here before. And crucially, I'm also setting the update function to be the regular game loop update function again. And when we add music back in, I will restart the music here. So yeah, that's what the timer thing does. The handle timers function isn't doing too much interesting, but I'll show you anyway. We're just looking at each of the timers in the structure that we pass in, which is going to be this global timers table here. We're deducting the amount of elapsed time from the remaining time. And if it's below 0, which means the timer sort of expired, then we just execute that callback function and remove the timer from the table. So yeah, we're kind of like, we're definitely messing with some global state here, but that's just how it goes sometimes. So yeah, in our case, the callback function is this bit here, right? It's this anonymous function that we define that resets everything and will restart the music. So yeah, that's what I did to sort of allow the death sound effect to play without like resetting the player's position and everything immediately, right? So we'll stop the music, play the sound effect, wait a second and a half, and then reset everything and start the music up again. All right, so for the music, so as I mentioned, or I have mentioned several times, like I'm not a sound designer or a composer. I'm like completely amateur at this, but I wanted to challenge myself to write a short loop to play during the game, right? So I started with just like a drum track. And by the way, I should shout out Gruber's channel. I'll put a link in the description. But he's a composer and a musician who does a lot of work on Pico-8, and his videos are actually really good for explaining to people that don't have any musical background how to write some basic Pico-8 stuff. So anyway, so yeah, check it out. Anyway, I started off by writing just a drum track with like kind of a, oh, well, it sounds like this. I'll let you hear it. So it's kind of a kick and a snare. And that's going to play through most of the parts of the music. The next thing was to work on a bass line, which is this. So it's probably instructed to show the notes. One thing that's cool about Pico-8 that I should probably point out is that if you can just kind of drag notes here to make it sound like something, to make your sound in your music. But if you hold control when you're dragging, it'll default to the C minor pentatonic scale. So you can sort of see like how the notes are snapping a little bit more. If I just kind of drag like this, it's kind of smooth. But if I hold control, it'll snap the notes. So you can see how this looks a little bit more jagged. So previously I had only been working in the C minor pentatonic scale, right? Because that's what Pico-8 defaults to when I hold control. So I was like, sweet, I'm just going to use that for everything. Uh, this time, in order for myself to use different notes, I went with F sharp minor pentatonic. And again, Gruber has a great explanation of how to do that. But uh, as far as I understand it, and I apologize if this is wrong, it just means a pentatonic scale has 5 notes in it, hence pentatonic. And you can kind of just play with those 5 notes. So my bass line has the 5 notes F sharp, A, B, C sharp, and E. And I wrote 2 bass line parts, and the first one sounds like this. Right, pretty cool. And the next one is just a variation on that, again using the same scale. You can see I mixed up the instruments a little bit too, but that one sounds like this. Okay. Melody similar, so I used the same scale, and for the first part of the melody, I just kind of picked like a slightly ascending pattern. So Gruber demonstrated a trick where you kind of just take the 5 notes of your pentatonic scale and just go, it's going to repeat them in upward loops. So you get sort of like this sawtooth pattern. So I did that for this part. And then for the variation of this, for the second part, again, same scale, and I went with downward patterns. So you can kind of see the remnants of this here. It started off as being like a clean sawtooth, and then I just kind of hacked it apart. So anyway, the second version of the melody sounds like this. Like that. All right, so the way this comes together is we have these 3 channels. In the first channel, I'm playing this is the drum track with the kick and the snare. This is the bass track, and this is the melody track. So when they play together, they sound like this. Okay. And you up here, this is how like the different sections of the music. I'm not sure what the correct term is, but I'm starting on 5. Just it's arbitrary. It's like sorry. So from the first section, I'm using the first bass variation and the first melody variation, and just the basic drum track. Then I'm going to repeat that again. So you can see 5 and 6 are the same. So the same thing is going to play twice. And then from 7, I change it up and I use the second bass variation and the second melody variation. So that sounds like this. So by the time we've come here, we've already heard like the first variation of the song twice. So the third time we sort of switch it up a little bit. And then finally, on the last part, I added even more variation. So you can see up until now, I've only been using the same drum track, right? Which was like sound 24. That's 24, 24, 24, 25. So I added kind of a different drum variation, which sounds like this. Just to give it a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of spice. And I also added special bass and melodic tracks to this. Again, everything's in the same scale. So I wanted, you'll notice like both for the drum track and the bass track, the end is sort of like crowded. The extra drum track, I added a bunch of snares at the end. So I wanted to sort of like have the, right before the track loops, I wanted to sort of be like this rush of stuff happening. I don't know how to explain this. Say the melody sounds like this, in case you're curious. So you can see here, I sort of fiddled around with some different instruments and some effects to kind of, again, like create this sense of like there was like some rush of sound towards the end of this track. So all those parts together sound like this. So I'll start from section 5, and it'll play through 5, 6, 7, and 8 once through, and then loop. So here we go. Okay, so that's what the main loop sounds like. And I was pretty stoked about this actually, but the one thing that I did not like was that there was no like lead into it. So like when you started the game, it just kind of started from here, which felt kind of abrupt. And so I wanted to write like a little intro section. And I did that too. This one, does this have a melody? It does have a little bit of a melody. So you can see I wrote separate drum, bass, and melody patterns for this too. And I sort of wanted everything to sort of warm up and introduce the various parts gradually. So the drum starts off with just the kick, and it doesn't add the snare part until the end. So it sounds like this. All right, so kind of again like it pushes you into the main part of the track by like just banging you on the head with the snares at the end there. The bass starts right from the beginning, and it's pretty sparse, especially around the middle of each little bit here. And the only thing I guess of note is that I did put a fade in effect on this first note, so it kind of gives it the like again the music is sort of fading in, even if it's only for one note. And yeah, the melody doesn't play at all. This is the melody track. The melody doesn't come in at all until the kind of like halfway through. So again, it's sort of gradually introducing each part of the song. So what that sounds like is this. And you can tell like kind of I don't know, I was playing around with like aligning the bass and melody parts a little bit. For the main part of the track, I didn't pay much attention to that, at least not consciously. But for the intro, I did sort of want it to be a little bit more rhythmic, to sort of introduce some of like the, I don't know, the ideas that were in the rest of the song. So you can see how like here the like the bass part and the melody part are often playing in sync. So yeah, that's what leads into the rest of the track. So we'll play it. I guess I'll just play it once through. I should point out that the intro only plays one time at the start of the level or after the player dies. And then after that, the main track, which I played earlier, 5, 6, 7, and 8, that part just loops. All right, so you'll only hear the intro once for every life or whatever. But I guess let me just play it through once so you can hear the whole thing. Okay, so you could hear there that like when we got to the end and we looped, we didn't go back to the intro. We just kind of skipped that and played the main loop. So one thing that I was trying to pay a little bit of attention to was the, for lack of a better term, the mix, which is like how loud the sound effects are versus how loud the music is. And that was like a little bit tricky. I'm not sure that I even have it right, but I wanted to make sure that the sound effects were audible, but not overpowering the music, right? So let me kind of show you. I guess I'll just play for a little bit and we'll see if we can hear the sound effects and how they all relate to the music. And also, I'll let the character die so that you can see how the music kind of stops, plays the death sound effect, and then restarts again. Okay, so I probably won't talk much during this, just so that my voice doesn't get in the way of the audio experience. But here you go. This is what it all kind of sounds like and looks like together. Okay, so yeah, I'm not super happy with how the sort of like victory sound sounds against the background music, but I think it'll do for now. So yeah, when I go to the next level, you'll notice that I chose not to restart the music track. I'm just letting the music kind of play as is. I didn't really feel like it was necessary to restart it there. And yeah, let me do that now. Okay, so next we'll let the player die. And actually, one thing that might be a hopefully it's not a bug. I haven't actually tried dying in level two. I wonder if he'll respawn in level two or if he'll respawn in level one or if this will just bug out. But anyway, you'll notice that when the player dies, hopefully we hear the death sound effect. There's like a brief pause to let the sound effect play, and then we go back to the beginning of the level, and then the music restarts. Let's see if that's a bug or not. We're gonna find out in real time, folks. Hey, so it looks like it worked. I'm still in level two. Yeah, so you can see how like the music cuts out and then the dead sound effect plays and then we restart again. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, like I don't think these are perfect sound effects or music, but I'm happy that I made them. Especially the music, I was pretty stoked how that turned out. And I would again give a massive shout out to Gruber's channel for helping me figure out how to put this together. So I think that's going to be it for this one. Again, this is sort of a different kind of episode because we were focused mostly on sound and music and very little on the coding aspect. But I don't know. I hope that was interesting for some of you. And as I get a little bit more experience under my belt doing music stuff, maybe I'll change the format of these in the future. Thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed this, feel free to subscribe or like or whatever. And I will catch you on the next episode. Bye for now, folks.